it takes people to notice.
All righty, folks. It is 9 o'clock, so I am going to begin. A couple things to take note of. This is Math Center's K to 5, Lumio District Library with student Chromebooks. This is a little different. We're going to ask you to join my Google Classroom first. So Shawnee has stuck in the chat a link to my Google Classroom. So I'm going to ask you to join that Google Classroom. And please take note of whatever time you came into the Zoom room because we'll need that at the end for attendance. So as everybody's joining and joining my Google Classroom, this is where we'll post updates for you all as things change during the summer or as new games are created. But it will also have the links for whatever you need. And if any of your colleagues could not join this session, you can just hand them the link to the Google Classroom and they could all get in if they needed to and go through some of the processes. All right, when you have joined my Google Classroom, you're going to go to the classwork tab. And inside the classwork tab is all the things we're going to do today. So the very first one under the welcome is the agenda. So I'm going to ask you to click on the agenda. The agenda is just a list of everything we're going to do today, including some links that we'll definitely come back to at the end, but we'll show you the how-to. So I'll do it first time, but we all know as educators, we need to do stuff several times before it comes ingrained in us. So there are some steppers there for you to be able to follow when we come back to. Plus all the presentations from our side, from the math side, are all in here so that you can just enjoy and listen and know you can always come back to those copies of things. So our agenda today is going to follow a nice session where we are going to do some welcomes and introductions. We're going to do an experience just like the kids would do so that you can get an understanding of what it kind of looks like in the classroom, even though we're virtual. Then we're going to talk about why some of these games are where they are in the breakout rooms because it's all about fluency. So we want to make sure that we're developing that fluency in the kids so they have a deep understanding as we go into higher level math. And then we'll come back out and we'll show you where everything is linked in the curriculum and how you can save your own copies and assign it to kids in Google Classroom. So that's kind of the layout for today. So just know that that is there inside of the Google Classroom. The hardest part of today is clicking back and forth between your screen and my Zoom screen. So just make sure you note how to flip back and forth. And then, because I'm going to ask you to go back to your Google Classroom now. And
Excuse
right underneath the agenda is live class. Shawnee, was there something?
Yeah, I think somebody out was going to ask a question. Somebody came off mute and had a question. Jasmine?
Yeah, I got it. She said live class. Should I click that? And then
Yes,
Lumino, should I click the Lumino?
yes, yes. You're going to click live class.
Yeah.
You're going to join my Lumio session. In this case, you can join as a guest if you want to, because I have that turned on. But for kids, we always make sure they join as a student so they can't, so we can track everything. But yes, you're going to join my Google Classroom. So once you see the slide that says Math Centers K to 6, you know you're in the right spot. You've joined my live session. We're going to start in a live session because that's how we run most of the PDs, and it's so that you guys are following pace with me. And then we're going to switch to an async link back in my Google Classroom somewhere because then I want you to be able to see what it would look like as a student if they so you could have several different games running at the same time with all links inside of your Google Classroom, and those would be asynchronous links. So right now I have 15 people in my class. Now I have 17 people, 18. I know we're getting close, but I should probably have close to 30 in my Lumio session. So if you're having trouble, you've joined my Google Classroom. Under the welcome section, there is a live class. You're just going to click on live class, go through and join the class as a student, and you'll be able to see my screen. If somebody's having trouble, let us know in the chat. Otherwise, I want to describe a couple things you're seeing. There is a new toolbar on the left-hand side. It's brighter, whiter, so you can see everything a little easier. It also now has the little lumen for you, so you could suck it in or suck it out, so that if you don't want it distracting, you can just suck in the tools. So if you're looking at the Lumio screen, you should be able to see the little lumen on the left side. You won't have all the teacher tools that I have right now because I'm on a teacher page, but you will be able to toggle things in and toggle things out. There's a couple of other new features that I'll point out along the way, or if you join any of the other Lumio sessions, you'll see them. But we'll also have a back to school what's new in August when it really makes sense for you to remember all those things. All right, I am going to continue. If you're having trouble, let Shawnee know in the chat, but I want to continue so that we keep on time. All
Terry,
right.
I'm actually going to interrupt you just very quickly. It's Denise, it says it won't let me in. Make sure that you're signed in with your district credentials. Oh, you're in Marty's class. So what you need to do, Denise, is go up in the top left and click I think it's 3 lines or it's a door with a pencil, and then leave his class, and then you can join Terry's.
Or if you can put a code in, Denise, just put in 128466. All right. Just real quick, virtual norms. Make sure you check your Zoom name. Make sure, because we want to make sure you get paid. Please leave your video camera on. If you're having trouble for some reason, please let Shawnee know. If you are driving, please log off of this Loom session or this Zoom session because I do not want you to have an accident. I don't want to be responsible for that. We can always get you the recording. Please leave yourself muted so that we decrease the background noise. If you have a question, please put it in the chat first so that we decide whether to bubble it up or if we know the answer is going to come in a little bit. So please start with everything in the chat and we'll go from there. Make sure you're on your district laptop and logged in as SDP because otherwise at the end, somebody's going to say they can't get paid because they can't do the survey if you're not logged into SDP. So I just want to make sure you realize that. But we have been doing this for 2 weeks now, so I think you are all probably been doing that. All right. What I need you to do is in the chat, I need you to introduce yourself. Tell me what school and what grade you teach. So in the chat, what school and what grade you teach. While you're doing that, we'll introduce ourselves kind of as we go. So I am Terry Politi. I work for Smart Technologies, but I'm embedded with the School District of Philadelphia. So I am an ed tech coach for several schools. This is a passion project of mine because I started as a high school math teacher. I have worked in math offices. So if I can play math games all day, I am quite excited. But I like the theory behind all of the things that we're talking about today. So I'm very excited. Shawnee, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. My name is Shawnee Barton. I am one of the technology program specialists out of the Office of Ed Tech here in the school district. I've been working out of this office for 8 years now, going into my 9th year. Before that, I was classroom teacher for about 18 years. My passion is still, I would say, science. I taught a little bit of social studies in there, a couple other things while I was in the classroom. Welcome. We appreciate you being here with us today.
And math team, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Terry, and thank you, Shani. My name is Tessa Mitkin. I am one of the elementary math curriculum specialists, and I am so excited that you guys all took a morning out of your summer to be here with us and play math games with us. So grateful.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jan Lee. I am also on the math team with Tessa in the elementary team, and I'm really excited that you're all here. And in a little bit, Tessa and I'll take you into breakout rooms to talk a little bit more about math.
Great. Thank you very much for coming. And thank you all for putting your stuff in the chat so we kind of see who you are and where you're from. When we do the breakout rooms, if you span a bunch of grade levels, you get to decide K2 or 3, 5. But we'll get to that when we get to that. But it's good to see everybody here. And let's actually begin. So on the agenda today, our purpose really is to show you vetted math centers that came from the ILC. We just put them in a different format. We are not saying that you have to do these games. You could do the paper games, you could do the electronic games that are built in, or you could do these options kind of as we go. Because we know kids are all different and they need different things. So we wanted to give you some options. The main reason that we looked at this is the electronic games inside of the ILC don't allow you to see the kids' work, where this you'll be able to see the kids' work as they continue or after the class. So that's why I said it is an option. It is not a thing you have to do, but it is a option that's there. We also are not creating all the games. We're still working on them and we'll still continue to add some, but some of the games don't make sense in electronic form at all. Some of them make sense much more on pencil paper because of what you're asking a kid to do. So don't expect all of the games to be created because it's whatever's best for the kids. We want to make sure that we have options, but just so that you're aware of that. All right. So our payoff today really is for you to walk away with an understanding of what's available to you and how you can assign them. Remember, this is the first time you're going through this. It takes a while to get used to any new process. So we left all of the stuff for you on the agenda. You can always go back to it. The first thing I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to rate yourself on our coordinate plane here. And when I make this into a whole class whiteboard, you're going to grab this infinity symbol in the right-hand corner. You're going to drag it over here. Our x-axis is Lumio. Are you a novice or an expert? And then our y-axis is centers. How do you feel about centers? Well, I feel pretty good about Lumio, but centers I am probably developing. So this is where I would put my infinity symbol of where I am or my point. So let me make this into a whole class whiteboard for you so you can all grab one. I will point out to you that the new change on the toolbar now has a magic wand instead of having to go up to the classroom management, the people's heads to change stuff on the fly. So it looks just like you are when you're in edit mode. So I am going to hit that magic wand. And now I'm going to make it into a whole class whiteboard. And now all of you on your side should be able to hit the start and be able to grab an infinity symbol and then tell me where you are on our coordinate plane.
Terry, I have to say this is one of my favorite beginning uh, things that you guys have. The coordinate plane was a genius idea.
That was
Um,
definitely the math team.
I
It
think
was
it's great.
I knew we wanted
It's
something, and when they said it, I was like, yes.
it is so on trend for the purpose of this session. I love it.
Yeah.
Also, your screen is going big and small, so just be aware of that. Like right now, we can only see like part of expert and part of proficient and part of developed, but it kind of flicks back and forth. So just want you to know.
Okay. Sorry, Zoom has been creating a problem the other day. I
Yes.
just need you to be aware that if when I ask you to watch the Zoom screen, if there's something you can't see, you just let Shawnee know in the chat. But right now, you should be on your Lumio screen, so we should be good. Great. We are all over the board on our coordinate plane. Our points are all over the place, which is great. So when you stick something in the chat, if it's a math question, the math team's going to answer it. If it's a Lumio question, Shawnee's going to answer it so that we can make sure we get all of your answers to everything as we're doing them today. But that's a great idea of where you all are. I have a good idea of who I have in the audience today.
Excuse me. Where can I get this the colon? I couldn't do it.
Are you in your
I am in
Lumio session?
no, I am I can see your screen. People are doing it.
Okay. So
But
do you have the tools on us? Can you grab an infinity symbol at all?
I couldn't see the infinity symbol.
Okay, so you're on my screen. Find your tab where you have where you're logged in.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. That's the hardest part today, Jasmine, is we're going to flip back and forth between the two. So if you're in the Zoom app, it's easy. You're just going to click on the Zoom app and toggle back and forth between that and Chrome. If you don't have it, you're going to toggle back and forth between tabs. Yeah. All right. So as we continue, let's see where we are. First of all, Lumio has a lot of things. In this session, we're really going to concentrate on individual handouts and stuff in the shared libraries, which consist of the district library also. If you are a K2 teacher, you are used to the skills block activities. The skills block activities were created for the smart board. So they were not made or intended when they were created to be handouts. These are all made for student devices. So we already turned all the pages into handouts for you. So I just need you to be aware of those things. Okay. If you are still having trouble, I see a couple people still having trouble in the chat. Let me stick this link. You might have to open a new window, but that link should get you right to my class. And if not, watch over here and then we'll get you in on the next section. So back to my normal thought. K2, these are already handouts. That will be a change in your thought process. Math is already handouts for the ones we need to. Just somebody mentioned that earlier in the week, and I was like, oh, yep, I didn't mention that last week, so I want to make sure I mention it today. All right, so lots of things, but this is what we're concentrating on today. And here's the big why. Okay. Why we created these. We created these, A, so that you can see the kids' work on your side on the computer when it is going on and afterwards. Notice in this picture that is on your screen, though, it is one device, two kids. So all of these were meant to be done in partners because that math discourse is so important that they talk to their partner, tell them what they're doing, explain their thinking, so that the whole thing should be about conversation, just like the pencil paper or just like the other one. But I just want you to take note that that's how or why they were all created, is so that kids can have discourse around what they're working on. The other reason why is so that you can go back and see their work afterwards if you need to have a good idea of where kids are depending on the session. So those are just some things to think about. They're all in your curriculum documents. And when we get to the point where we're in the breakout rooms, they will show you exactly where they're located in the curriculum documents so that you have a good idea of where to click on and where to get to them. And then we are going to try one as a kid. So what I want you to do right now is just watch my screen. So come back over to the Zoom screen if you haven't already. And I'm going to walk through this like I would. I'm a little OCD, if you haven't already figured that out. I'm a little controlling in my own classroom. I would want to model this on the front of my board first so that the kids understand what they're going to do at their seats. You do not have to run it that way. I just want to give you some things of what I'm doing. But the reason I'm bringing you over to my Zoom screen is because I want to explain all the pages that you're going to see in every file, every game. All right, so if you're watching on my Zoom screen, every file is going to start out with, what is it? It's 5 in a row. It's stage 3. If stage 3 has 5 different parts, there's 5 different files there, and we'll get into that in a minute. But every first page has the teacher recommendations, what the students will be doing, and then a teacher doc. That doc is just available because it has all the steps you need from the curriculum guides to looking at the student works and everything in between. So there is a stepper with everything on the front page. The second page is always the directions page. If this were me, I would have already known the directions. I would have read them. I would have understood them. If you're teaching 3-5, the kids might be able to read them themselves, or there's also audio directions that they can listen to as they go along. So the game we're going to play when we play it, don't try to play it yet, is we're going to do 5 in a row, add 7, 8, or 9. So each kid picks what color counter they're going to be, who goes first, and they're going to pull a number, add 7, 8, or 9. And while they're doing that, they're explaining, I'm going to add 8 to my number and talking it through with their partner. They're going to then cover it. And then they drag their number, their first starting number, to the trash can. Second player takes their turn, does the same thing, still talking out loud to their kid, drags theirs. The object is that you try to get 5 in a row, across, down, or diagonal. Or you can keep playing until the board is filled up, whichever one kind of comes first. So that's the background directions. Now, if this is my classroom, I'm going to go to the next page and I'm going to go to the teacher handout and I'm going to send 2 kids to the board right now so that I can do the game live with kids just so they understand how to play it when they go to their seats. So kid 1, it'll be my left shoulder today. My left shoulder pulls 1, 9. I'm going to do, this is me talking out loud to my partner. I'm going to do 9 plus 9 is 18. So I grab my green, put it over 18. I'm good to go. Then they drag their number to the trash because we've used that trash or we've used that number. Second kid goes. Oh, I got a 0. I'm going to add 7. So 7 and 0 is 7 and put it on 7 because I'm strategically trying to block my partner also while they're doing it. So that's the strategic part that it's kind of fun to hear the kids talk about. So when they pull the next number, hopefully the kid is thinking about how he can get either a 9 or a 13. You get the idea, the math strategy that kind of comes behind this. where they're kind of working together. But you'll also be able to know where a kid is in that stage, because if he is just picking out the 7 because he knows 7 plus 4 is 11, then you kind of know where they are in their fluency of math facts. So it's kind of interesting to hear some of that conversation. Anyway, this is me in the front of the class describing it all to kids. Remember, I was in a live session. Okay. Kids are not going to be live more than likely. They're going to be working at their own pace because there's multiple boards. Like if I go to the next page, there's a whole nother page, boards for the kids that finish first. There's another one in there. Depending on what the game is, will depend on how many pages we made. And somebody asked me the other day, well, the kids are going to know where the green arrows are if you play them again. If there's multiple pages, I moved around all the green arrows or all the numbers so that I tried to trick the kids so they won't memorize where the facts are, just so you know. All right. So what I'm going to ask you to do, I'm actually going to stop my live class for you all right now. Okay. Because I don't want you to play in here. I want you to play like a kid. So I'm going to ask you to go back into my Google Classroom. So everybody find that Google Classroom section. When you get there, there is a section called Student Experience. So we were in the welcome. Now you're going to go down to the Student Experience section. When you open up Student Experience, you'll see 5 in a row edition. This is an asynchronous link. You're going to have to click on sign in with Google, because asynchronous links make sure as you track the data. So when you click on this link, it's going to take you into an asynchronous link. So I'm going to ask you all to click on that link now. You're going to have to join with your Google credentials. But you will now notice that you are in as a student, and it's asynchronous because you should have the arrows on the left-hand side. When you do, I already described page 1 and page 2. So we're going to ask you to arrow through those just so that you can see them, and you should be able to arrow through on your own and go down and hit play the first game. Okay. So do open it up, start playing. And if you have one of your own kids in the room, have them come on over and play the game with you.
Terry, you're muted right now if you're talking.
Thank you. What I was saying before I realized that I was muted is that you should have an idea of how to play the game now. You should have an idea of what's available. You should know you can arrow down and play another game. If you finish the first game, there's another one available to you, and so forth and so on. But again, remember, it's the conversation that these kids are having. One Chromebook, two kids, the activities were made. I'm going to ask you to stop playing the game, which I know is kind of hard for some of you. And I want you to come back over to my Zoom screen for a minute because I want to show you another new feature that is in Lumio right now. So once you come back over into my session or the Zoom session, you will see the dashboard looks a little different now. We have thumbnails that started coming. So the thumbnails actually would show you live. So if Miss K moved something, I'd be able to see it moving as it went. So I can see them all. You will say, Terry, why can't you see some of the others? I have used this same session for 4 times now. So some of these people are not currently in my class because they were in one of the other sessions. So for you, you would see your whole class that's in right now so that you can see them. I just wanted to point out why. But it's live thumbnails, so I can actually see who's working, who's playing. I can't see who's checked unless I'm actually watching a game. If I wanted to go into Mrs. Lincoln's page, I could click in Mrs. Lincoln's page and actually go in and see. And if Mrs. Lincoln dragged one over, I couldn't hear what she's adding to it, but I could tell whether it was there or not. But you're still going to do some of the stuff you always did, which was monitor the classroom, walk around, and start that discussion from those guidance documents that are great questions that the kids actually helps them learn the math as they kind of go along. So I just want you to be aware that that is there and that is available. So what I want right now is in the chat, I want you to, let me go back into my real session. In the chat, what I want you to do is that was your first impression. So tell me what you think so far of the games in Lumio, and I'll grab the exact question I was going to ask you. What's your first impressions about using these during a math center? So in the chat, please put in what you think your first impression is. They do love working in partners, and they like talking, and they like hearing other kids' thoughts much better than they like hearing my thoughts. I like that somebody said was talking about the monitoring, fun, engaging. Yep, it'll all be right in Google Classroom, which is the easy way for kids just to check. Great. Yep, there's a lot of different ways to use a lot of different stuff. So just be aware that this is an option for you all to use and kind of go from there. So what we're going to move into next, thank you all very much for your thoughts, is we're going to move into breakout rooms. And the breakout rooms are K2, 3, 5. And like I said, if you don't fit exactly into one or if you span grades, K2 is going to work with addition and 3, 5 will work with multiplication. And math team, did I say that right or did I need to add anything else?
No, you nailed it. I did also want to add that if you work across those grade spans, you will have access to the resources in the room you don't choose. So you can always like look at the slides or we have a little screencast if you want to get caught up on the other side.
Perfect. And by the end of today on the agenda, I will also have the recording of the whole session with the K2 breakout and the 3-5 breakout in one. So if you want to go back and see the recording piece of it, you can. That will be linked on the agenda by the end of today. All right. So we are going to go into breakout rooms right now. So have we started them yet, ladies?
Yep, they're open now.
All right. If you don't see them, in your Zoom window, you should see more. There are 3 dots, or in your Zoom tools, you'll see 3 dots and breakout rooms, and you're just going to click join for the room you want to join. If you can't find that, once everybody leaves, I'll help you get to where you need to get to. But you find your Zoom tools, go to the 3 dots or the more, and select which room you want to go to.
Okay, perfect. I remember to do what I wanted to do. Okay. Before I get started, I just also want to say that Zoom has been having a problem where it's like zooming in on the screen that I'm sharing, and all of us are having this problem. So if there's ever a point where you can't see something on my screen that you think you should be able to see, please, please, please stop me, let me know. I want to make sure you can see what you need to see. With that, we're going to get started. So I already shared a whole group, but my name is Tessa Nitkin. I am one of the elementary math curriculum specialists, and I'm so excited to be talking about fluency with all of you today. Really excited for this partnership with EdTech, especially because I know I've heard for years now that fluency is an under focused on part of IM, right? It's an area that I think a lot of folks have identified as a growth point. So I'm really excited to have this opportunity to focus on centers and also some fluency development. So we're gonna dive in, and it's a small group, so feel free to interrupt, come off mute. I welcome all your questions. All right, so we're gonna start with what is fluency? And I want you to take a minute to think about your own experience with fluency. So for me, I like think back to being at the kitchen table and being like drilled with flashcards as a kid by my mom. But think about what fluency means to you. And we're all going to put just one word in the chat that you think of when you think of fluency and see where our thinking is this morning. Whenever you're ready. Thank you, Monique, for getting us started. Yeah, automaticity, definitely. That speed component. What are other folks thinking about? The kitchen table, yeah. And like the flashcard, I remember it being like stressful too. I'm not good at memorizing things and like sweating a bit about it. Fast. Yep. Yep. Yeah, wait for a few more responses from folks in the room. Yeah, that quick component. Oh, the Jasmine, you also specified that you think of addition facts, right? Yeah. I don't remember flashcarding with addition facts as a kid, but I remember like the times table multiplication being a thing for sure that I
But
had to
I
just
did
remember.
that, play with the flashcard addition
Okay.
practice with the Lumino.
Oh, with Lumio, like now as a teacher. Cool. Cool. Routine. Yeah. Well, thank you for getting those ideas started. We're gonna kind of norm on a definition today, knowing that we all bring in different experiences with fluency based on both our experiences as students and then as teachers teaching in different contexts. So we think about fluency, there are a couple main components that we want to think about. The first one is accuracy, which, you know, we could easily get someone to memorize a fact and they could memorize it wrong. So we want them to be correct. Then there's that efficiency component, which a lot of you named, right? It's that speed. We want to be really fast. And then these last two, I don't think often come to mind right away. And this is where there's a little bit of a mental shift here. One of these other components is flexibility. So we want to think about flexibility in how we solve our facts fluently, right? And we'll look at some examples of what that means with actual numbers in a few minutes. I think that will make more sense then. But when students have flexibility with their facts and efficiency, that allows them to have appropriate strategy selection, which is really important in preparing them for later math, to flexibly think about, oh, how do numbers relate to each other and how can I use different strategies? All right, now we know what fluency is. What's wrong with just memorizing facts, right? A lot of us talked about those flashcards at the beginning. Why aren't we just doing flashcards every day? It worked for us. You know, we got our facts. What's wrong with that? This is where there's a difference between memorization and fluency. They are not the same. Memorization has a lower cognitive level because we're not connecting what we're memorizing to the meaning of numbers, right? I have a 4-year-old at home. I could teach her to memorize that 2 plus 2 is 100, right? She could memorize that. I could just like tell her that's true. She'd probably believe me, maybe, I don't know. But she wouldn't have any understanding of number sense or how numbers relate to each other. So when we're just memorizing alone, it's in isolation. It also doesn't work for all students. We know that there are a lot of students, especially including our neurodivergent students, who memorization is a challenge for, right? I remember when I got to high school and I had to pick a world language to learn, I specifically picked Latin because I was terrified of speaking and memorizing a language, like in speaking fluently. And I was like, oh, Latin, I can just do it on paper and not have to talk out loud, right? So that memorization is a real barrier for a lot of students. And that affects their math identity, right? If I'm thinking about math as just my ability to remember flashcards and I'm not good at that, now I'm thinking I'm not good at math. And that's a really small part of math. And we'll see in a moment, it doesn't need to be what makes a student successful in math. So instead, we want to think about fluency, which is more robust. Fluency involves a higher level of thinking because we're actually understanding the relationship between numbers and operations. In my 2+2 example, I need to know, what does 2+2 mean, right? What does it mean to add? What do those numbers represent? What is their relative size? How are they not in any way possibly going to be equal to 100? They're building number sense because of all the things I just mentioned, the relative size of numbers, how numbers relate to each other. And these strategies and making connections between facts helps build a positive math identity. We'll see in a moment, in teaching fluency strategies, there's actually a lot of divergent ways students can think, a lot of creativity that can come up. And so you don't need to fit a narrow mold of being good at math to have that positive math identity built when we think about fluency in this way. All right. So memorization is our ultimate goal. I want students at the end of second grade to be fluent with those addition facts, just like how in later elementary school, we want them to be fluent with their multiplication. We want it to be fast. We want it to be from memory. But even though we want to get there, that's not the instructional strategy. We want them to know it by memory. We want to use another instructional strategy to support getting there. And so that strategy is based on conceptual understanding and interconnected strategies. And that's how fluency supports multiplication. Now we're going to actually get into the numbers and see what this looks like with real addition facts, which I'm really excited about. All right, so we know that in addition, especially, but this is also true for multiplication. In addition, we start forming our concepts of addition with counting. Kindergarten, early first grade, we're counting on our fingers. We're counting on orally, we're using counters. That's like pretty concrete. We kind of see that one. And then we want to magically jump over to this phase 3 of automaticity, where like, I just know it like that, I got it. And we know that we want students to have that mastery to support them in later math. When they're doing multi-digit addition and subtraction, think about standard algorithm carrying their ones, they got to know 5 + 8 quickly is 13. But there's that middle stage. Something needs to happen in between. I'm counting on my fingers and I just know 5 + 8. That's a big leap to make. And that middle step, that phase 2, is deriving. Deriving is when we use reasoning strategies based on foundational facts. And those strategies build on conceptual understanding, build students' confidence and number sense understanding to progress them towards mastery. I'm going to look at our facts now. This addition table has addends 0 through 9 and sums 0 through 18. In a moment, I would like everyone, we're going to do a waterfall in the chat. I want everyone to write one fact on here that you think is easier for students to know. It's like a first fact you want students to learn. Okay, we're going to type it in, but don't press enter yet. I want to see them all together in a little small group waterfall because I know there aren't that many of us this morning. What is an easy fact on here to learn? I'll give everyone about 15 more seconds to write their fact. And then we're all going to hit enter. Go. Thank you. See, 1 + 1, 5 + 5. What other facts are easy for students to learn? 2 + 0, 0 + 0. Thank you, Marcus. Harry had +1s and +0s. Yeah. 9 plus 9. 5 plus 5. Cool. Okay, so Monique, I see you're doing doubles. Yeah, any double, right? Where the two atoms are the same. Cool. I see Jasmine also had doubles. Lily shared a double. Molly Ann shared a double. Awesome. So a lot of doubles, a lot of plus zeros I'm seeing. And 1 plus 1. Thank you, Jody. Yep. So these are all facts that are easier to learn. We expect students to learn these sooner, except for the doubles facts. They're all also focused on smaller quantities, or at least one of the add-ins being smaller, like plus 0 or plus 1. We're going to watch now as this table animates, and we're going to see which facts are these foundational facts that we need students to learn first. Because looking at this entire table of students learning facts, like that is a lot of facts, right? We have like 100 facts here to learn. Ooh, that's a big task. That's a big stack of flashcards, but we're going to break it down into steps. So our foundational facts, we start with plus zeros, which some of you named in the chat, and note that this highlights both the vertical column and the horizontal, because if students have a strong concept of commutativity, they should be able to reverse their facts. So if I know 3 plus 0, I should also know 0 plus 3. The next group is our one more. Those are highlighted in blue. These ones are using counting on as a strategy. If I'm trying to figure out 5 plus 1, I know the number after 5 is 6. I count on to 6, and I know 5 plus 1 is 6. That's an earlier fact to learn. Next, we have our two mores. Same idea, we're counting on, but now by 2. Next, we have our doubles, which are in this like really faint butter yellow across the middle of the screen. But I know several of you named the doubles there earlier. These are all the facts where the atoms are the same. 4 plus 4, 6 plus 6, 7 plus 7. I will say some of those bigger doubles facts can be hard for students to learn. And so if a student wants to use one of the derived strategies for like the 8 plus 8 or the 9 plus 9, that would be an option as well. But the doubles facts are important because they help us derive other facts. So those are we have one more foundational fact. Our last foundational fact group is our combinations of 10. This one is super important especially for using the standard algorithm later on. We want students to be able to make groups of 10 and see how far away numbers are from 10. 10 comes up a lot. So these are the facts that add up to 10, 4 plus 6, 7 plus 3, things like that. We want students to know how to make 10. Okay, those are our foundational facts. You'll notice that's a good chunk of the table, right? It's foundational. A lot is colored in at this point. Now we're going to move to derived fact strategies. And this is when we're using one of those foundational facts to derive. I'm going to go over these briefly here, and then the next slide we'll look at these in more detail. So for derived fact strategies, one of them is near doubles. You'll see that those are all the facts on either side of a double. Then we have all of the facts that have a sum greater than 10 could be found using a make a 10 strategy. Again, we'll show this in more detail in the next slide. And then lastly, this one doesn't highlight anything on the table, but creating equivalent but easier known sums is a strategy that is personal to each student. Once we did all that coloring in, the only facts that aren't highlighted on the table are 5 plus 3, 6 plus 3, 3 plus 5, and 3 plus 6. And if you have commutativity, that's really only 2 facts that can't be found with one of these strategies, which is pretty exciting. And I think makes the whole table less intimidating if you do it step by step. We're going to look at our plus zeros, we're looking at our plus ones, our plus twos. It's broken down step by step. All right, let's look at some of these strategies now. Oh, before I do that, I also wanted to highlight the grade levels where these are mastered. At the end of kindergarten, the expectation is that students have all of their facts to 5. And so this red staircase highlights that in kindergarten, that really is mostly foundational facts, your facts within 5. The only facts there that are derived are 3 plus 2 and 2 plus 3 are near doubles, but those are also plus 2s. So even that, they are all foundational facts in kindergarten. In first grade, your fluency standard is to have facts within 10. Again, a lot of those are foundational. You have some derived facts in there. And then second grade, your fluency standard is to have your facts within 20. I will also note these are just our fluency standards, which are different than our base 10 standards. For example, in first grade, with strategies, we're adding and subtracting within 100 by the end of the year. But for fluency, we're within 10. So that's our focus today. Smaller scale for those fluency standards. Okay, now we're gonna look at the derived fact strategies. Got ahead of myself. The derived fact strategies. The first one we're gonna look at is near doubles. 8 plus 7 is an example. 8 plus 7, I could think about that if I know my doubles facts as 7 plus 7 and one more. So I know my 7 plus 7 is 14. One more, I get to 15. Or maybe I really like 8 plus 8, and I see that as one less than 8 plus 8. 8 plus 8 is 16, so one less is 15. Same problem, 8 plus 7 again, but using a make a 10 strategy. This one, I need to know my combinations of 10, right? We said that those are really important earlier. I know that 8 is only 2 away from 10. So I know 8 plus 2 is going to make 10. If I take 2 from my 7, I have 5 left over, and I get to 15. Similarly, if I know that 7 plus 3 is going to get me to 10, then I have 5 left over from that 8, and I get to 15. Different strategy, but both strategies are using a fact that was foundational to then derive a harder fact. I knew my doubles. Now I'm going to know my near double, which is harder. I knew my combinations of 10. So now I'm going to use make a 10 to learn 8 plus 7, which is a harder fact. The last strategy is equivalent but easier known sums. And this one is really specific to an individual and what works for them. I always love to tease Jayan, my colleague who you met earlier this session. Her favorite fact, she always says, is 8 plus 4. That's not my favorite fact, but she loves 8 plus 4. I mean, she says she always has. And so when she thinks of 8 plus 7, she thinks of 8 plus 4. She knows that that's 12. And then she has 3 more to get to 15. That's not how I would think about it, but it works for her. And that's where we get back to that math identity piece, right? If I was just teaching her that she had to use a flashcard and I don't care about her strategy and all that, it might be discouraging to her math identity. But instead, look at this flexibility and creativity, and it works. You think back to the beginning, she's still accurate, she's still efficient, right? She's still working towards her fluency. And this one is, like I said, really personal to each student. Those derived fact strategies might be, some of these might be newer to us, some of these might be more familiar. There is a screencast linked at the bottom there, and that just reviews these exact strategies again in a YouTube. It's like an 8-minute video. And so if you ever want to refer back to it or refresh on those strategies, it's there. There's also in the multiplication slides, a multiplication version of multiplication derived facts. So if you support upper grades and want to take a look at that, it will be available for you. Okay, I'm gonna pause there for a minute. Think for a moment. Are there any of these strategies that were newer to you today? And if there were, jot it in the chat or share, maybe this was reinforcing strategies that you already are familiar with.
I think it's a little bit newer, but is not newer, but I taught like a second grade last year. It's so hard for them to understand.
Yeah.
Like they are thinking, make it 10, like they are confused sometimes. That's why we need to explain, like this way. But it was on IM. Also, they shows how to do it.
Yep.
But it was hard for them then. But we have to teach it this way. Am I right?
Yeah, so I think this is a good way to support students with their fluency. We're going to look in a moment about at how this shows up in centers, and that is like our focus for this PD. So I'm like staying on task and not getting distracted. But I will say these strategies show up a lot as well in the IM warm-ups when students talk through their mental math. But I am going to stay on centers, so I know that's what we're here for today. All righty.
It's
Oh,
all
Terry,
related, Tessa.
I
It's
know it's
all
all
related.
related, but I
Well,
just
and
I could
I
go
was
on a
laughing
warm-up
because
tangent.
as I was playing the game against myself live against all of you, I
Yeah.
went right back to the foundational facts because I was
Mm,
trying to talk to you and solve the right math problem at the same time.
yeah.
Because in my head, I go right to the other derived way to put it in my
Hmm.
head, but I couldn't talk about other things like I was explaining the games to you and do the facts at the same time. So in my head, when I saw this, I'm like, oh, I really do think like that. I think
Yeah.
like that with integers. I think like that all the time. I just don't
Yes.
know that we show the kids how we think sometimes. And that's, I think, part of the discussion for each of them is
Yeah.
you may still be doing this game electronically, but if it makes sense for the kids to have pencil paper or manipulative there while they're doing it, it makes sense because then they can explain it to their partner how they're deriving it. Because I
Yeah.
think that to me is the power of them becoming fluent. Did I say that about right, Tessa?
Yes, yes. And Terry, that's your experience. It can't be right or wrong. It just
No,
is.
no.
Yeah. But yes, definitely foundational facts, especially I find it with addition. I think a lot of folks have like higher levels of fluency memorization. But when you go to the multiplication side, like I definitely, there are facts that are easier and faster for me over there than others. All right. So let's think about how this shows up in centers now, because that's what we're here for today is to focus on centers. So these are two of our addition centers. If you've been teaching K2 for a few years, they'll probably be familiar to you. We have five in a row, the addition and subtraction version, and all the stages. And then we have shake and spill and all those stages. And I want you to take a minute, look at the names of the stages, and think about what you notice now that you know more about fluency development. And anyone who would like to drop in the chat or share out loud, what do we notice about these fluency stages or these center stages?
For the shake and spill for K to 2,
Mm-hmm.
I find it like interesting how like stage 1 is counting and then you just go to stage 2 of like what is more. I feel like a lot of kids don't know what is more or less, like what is a bigger number or what's a less number to begin with.
Yeah. Yep. And so if I think back to that table we had earlier where we taught about how fluency starts with counting and we want to get to automaticity, we're starting with counting and shake and spill, which is how we're beginning that addition and subtraction. The which is more is developing something called relative magnitude, which is one of the components of number sense. Okay. And we're thinking about how we compare number size, knowing that 3 is bigger than 2, that 10 is bigger than 2. That's really important for students to later have reasonability in their addition facts. And these stages are, I forget, I think it's not until unit 2 or 3 that stage 2 comes out. They are obviously aligned to the curriculum unit. So there is more support in comparing quantities when that rolls out. Thank you for sharing, Molly Ann. Any noticings on the 5 in a row side?
Yes, and they want to be winner like a 5 in a row, the match. Who
Mhm.
is like we played with Terry's game.
Yeah.
Like
What do you notice with the stage titles though? So we start stage 1 is adding 1 or 2. Jasmine, what are you saying?
yes, we know that. Like a
Yeah.
add 1 or 2, then
Yeah.
what's the equal? Like we did it here.
Yeah.
Like got the number, then we added. Terry gave us that. It's the same
Yeah.
kind.
Yeah. And is that adding 1 or 2, is that building a foundational fact group or a derived fact group?
Uh, is it foundational?
Yeah, exactly. It's foundational. Those are the math facts we want students to learn first, right? And so that's why they're designed to be the earlier stages. We want to master that adding 1 or 2. I will also note we haven't talked as much in this session about subtraction because subtraction, we want that to come after the related addition fact. So we have adding 1 or 2, and then once they're solid on that, now we're going to switch over to subtracting 1 or 2.
Yes. Thank you.
Adding, yeah, of course. Thank you. Adding 7, 8, or 9, those are hard facts. Those are derived facts. We're going to have some foundation first and then derive those. I also want to note stage 3A and 3B, those are new stages for next year, which I'm really excited about that we've designed. And the reason we designed those is in all the fluency research, we know, and you guys highlighted this when you talked about facts that were easier, that doubles and near doubles are really important strategies for students. And IM did not provide any games that were specific for doubles and near doubles. And so what we've done is we've added for 5 in a row here, stage 3A is near doubles to 10, so that'd be appropriate for first grade. Stage 3B is near doubles to 20. And then over in Capture the Square, which is a different game, we've added a stage that is doubles to 10 and doubles to 20. And so now there are game options to support all of those foundational and derived fact strategies, which is really exciting, I think. So those are great that those are in there. And for 5 in a row, the Lumio version also supports near doubles. Okay, so our centers, the stages are designed to mirror the development of fluency, right? We can be really specific about which facts students need to work on. We're not just working on all of fluency in second grade, for example, up to 20. That's a lot. We want to get there by the end of the year, but which facts are students working on now? Are they working on their foundational facts? Which derived fact strategies are they working on, etc. Okay, how do we find these centers? So in our planning and resource guides, which is just the new name for pacing guides, but in those planning and resource guides, at the top of every unit, there is a row that says unit level centers, and then it says ongoing fluency centers. Those are the centers that are there to support fluency. And like we just saw, adjusting the stage there adjusts the type of facts that students are working on, whether it's foundational or derived. All right, now with our last 2 minutes, I want to give us a moment to reflect. How will your knowledge of foundational and derived facts inform your center selection and monitoring? I'm going to give us 1 minute of think time, and then I'd love to have maybe 2 people share out before we have to head back to the main breakout room where we'll get to see how to make all this happen in action with Terry. So take a moment to think about it. All right, I see some folks in the chat are sharing about student grouping. Could I have one person come off mute and tell me more about what you mean by student grouping? Either Michael or Monique or someone else who is thinking the same thing.
I'm thinking like understanding foundational facts and derived facts will help me understand which center they will go.
Yeah, I love that. Yep, we're selecting specifically which stage of that center is right for that group of students. And I'm really excited when we go back to the main room and Terry shows you how to actually get the Lumio centers and assign them to students. We'll see how you can assign it to a specific group of students too, right? So you can have 4 students working on near doubles, whereas these 5 students are working on adding 1 or 2, right? We're differentiating. And that's also what's really cool about Lumio is you don't have to like make copies of all those different stages. You can like click, 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 get them to different groups.
Actually, is very important for student needs.
Yes. Yes. And it seems similar to Molly Anderson in the chat, made me think about IEP goals, like adding, subtracting within 10. Yeah. But then within that goal, there can be like steps to get there that fit with the foundational facts. Amazing. All right. Well, thank you all for sharing and for all your input. This concludes our breakout room component. But if you have any questions on the mathy side of all of this, so fluency development, center stages, you can always reach out to math at Phila SD. And I know that at the end, Terry will share also your ed tech resources to support this work. But thank you so much for your engagement and being here. And yeah, any other questions I can answer while we wait for breakout rooms to close?
Nope. I also added both fluency videos on the main agenda because
Great.
I've watched them both. I've liked them both.
Oh, I will also say the slides I just used are linked in the agenda under resources at the bottom. So there's like a resource breakout slides K2 if you ever would like. Cool.
3-5 must be going over today.
I hear them wrapping it up actually because Jan and I are
You're in the
physically in the same
spot.
space. Yeah. Yeah. I
All
think
right,
they
we'll
are
see you back
closing
over in the main
momentarily.
room, guys. It will close
Yep.
for you automatically, or you can also go back to the three dots and
Great.
go back to the main room.
Thanks all.
Right now. Okay, so we broke up the session today into 3 different parts. This is going to be part 2. In part 1 with Terry just now, you got a little bit of a taste of what we're trying to introduce to you. In the coordinate plane warm-up, I noticed that some of us are new to Lumio, some of us are new to centers, new to both, and some of us are kind of comfortable with both. So in the beginning, in part 1, we wanted to introduce to you something that's new for everyone. We've Lumiofied, if that we could make that into a verb, we've Lumiofied some centers. And the centers that we chose to Lumiofy were centers that really focused on fluency. So you just got to see what a Lumio center might look like. Let's right now go into then how does fluency develop? We're going to go into a little bit more content of the math, but while we go over it, in the back of your head, I want you to think about, okay, how does this content help me intentionally decide which center and what stage of the center students should play? So that's kind of the purpose behind why we're going to go over fluency. After the breakout room, we're going to go into the main session again, and then Terry will share with you how do you assign those Lumio centers to students. So let's go ahead and get started with the multiplication fluency part. But throughout the whole piece, I just want you to think about, okay, how is this going to help me decide which center students should play and which stage or which level students should play based on what you know about them? So what is fluency? I recognize a lot of you from Teen Up Tuesday sessions. If you've joined us for addition or multiplication fluency, this is a review. So please share your knowledge with us. If you haven't been to a fluency session, maybe this is new. Maybe this is just reinforcing what you already know. So let's take a look at what is fluency. When we think about fluency, I want you to think about 2 to 4 words that come up. And when I think about fluency, think about those fact fluency. So like 2 plus 2 or 4 times 2, 8 times 5. When you think about those words, fact fluency, what words come up to you? I'm going to go ahead and ask you to open up the chat feature as I try and open up mine as well. And then write 2 to 4 words, but don't press enter quite yet. So write 2 to 4 words. What comes to mind when you think of the words math, fact, fluency? Don't press enter yet. In a little bit, I'm going to ask us to press enter all at the same time so we can read through each other's thoughts together. Okay, once I do a countdown, I'm going to ask you to press enter. If you haven't put in any words yet, go ahead and just scroll through the words that you see showing up on our chat, and you could do a thumbs up or a heart or a question mark, whatever emotions come to mind, and react through the emoji. Let's go ahead and press enter in 3, 2, 1. Okay, go ahead and even if you press enter, let's go up and scroll through. Just see some of the words that are coming up in our chat. Okay, I see a lot of words that have to do with like time factor. So the words that I see that have to do with time factor is that immediacy, or I think there was like Jennifer, you put fast. Rosalind, you also put fast. So there's that time factor. And some of you use the word automatic as a time factor. But when I think about, sorry, I should have started with the correctness. A lot of you first thought about like correct. I wanted to point out that when we think about fact fluency, we want students to be correct, right? That is a given, but still that is one part of fact fluency. The next part is the part that I was just talking about the time, the fast, immediate, automatic. But when we think about automatic, one thing that, yes, automatic, there is a time factor to it, but something that also is a part of that automatic efficient part is strategy. So do I have efficiency both in terms of time and strategy? There are some more efficient strategies and a little bit less efficient strategies when we're thinking about time and accuracy. And we're going to go into what those strategies might look like today. Another part is flexibility. I will say that this number 3, flexibility, was something new for me when I was really thinking about and learning about how fluency develops. This flexibility piece is connected with this efficient strategy piece. But one of you put, I knew I saw it here, this idea of number sense. So when we think about facts, both in addition and multiplication, depending on the numbers that we're adding or multiplying, we want students to be flexible so that they can be efficient with the strategy that they select based on the numbers that they're working with so that they can be fast and accurate. One part that I want to bring up is this 4th part of that appropriate strategy selection. So for example, I'll go a little bit deeper in a bit, but for example, if I'm doing 2 times 4, 2 groups of 4. Skip counting might be an efficient strategy, right? Because I can do 4, 8. I only have to skip count 2 times because we have 2 groups. But if I am doing 9 times 4, skip counting 4 9 times, I can do it. I can still be correct, but it's not going to be as efficient because now we're having to keep track of more skip counting. And so when we think about these strategies, we want students to, yes, have a knowledge of many strategies, not just so that they know like all of these strategies, but so that they can appropriately select a strategy to be efficient. Let's go into a little bit of that in a bit. But one of the questions that I had when I first learned about fluency as these 4 aspects was this question of what's so wrong with just memorizing facts? For me as a student and as a teacher, memorizing was a strategy that I used as a teacher and as a student to learn my multiplication facts. So I had this question of like, why not just memorize? That's what I did. And it's what I did with my students for many, many years. So one of the things that really helped me think about this, because when I first learned about fluency development in this way, I thought like memorization isn't even a part of this kind of like new fluency. But what really helped me think about this is not that memorization is not a part of fluency anymore. It's just rethinking what is the role of memorization. So memorization is still the ultimate goal. Many of you put that into the chat. Quick, automatic, we need to know it. That is the ultimate goal. However, what's different about it is that it's not the strategy. Memorization is the goal, but not the strategy. So what do we mean by that? What is the strategy? We want students' memorizations. We want students just knowing the fact to be based on their reasoning, based on their understanding of multiplication as equal groups, as well as the numbers that they're working with. So we want that fluency of developing reasoning strategies to then lead to memorization. So this really helped me really think about this. Memorization is definitely a part of fluency, but it's not the strategy, it's the goal. One of the things that in our first session, a teacher mentioned this, and I was like, I'm going to steal this from you. So I've been repeating it ever since, is she said that her shift in thinking was from like rote memorization, right? Just memorizing to conceptual memorization. And I thought that was a very interesting choice of words. And I was like, I'm going to steal that because in both, there is a space for memorization. It's just kind of in a different place. So one of the things that helps us think about that is how then does fluency develop? In phase 1, it is counting. So when we think about multiplication, a lot of times we do skip counting first because we're thinking about equal groups. So here we could be skip counting, or we might be even like counting one by one, but that is still phase one. Historically for me, after I would encourage students to skip count, then I would go straight into like, now just go ahead and memorize it. What helped me then was thinking about that there is this middle step phase two. So what is that middle step phase two? The middle step of phase two is when students use their reasoning strategies based on foundational facts. And let's go into a little bit about what do we mean by foundational facts. Here is what is this called? A multiplication chart of all of our facts from 0 to 10. So on top, we have our factors in gray and on our left, and then in these white boxes are our products. So for example, this 20 over here is our product of 4 and 5. I'm going to use the word foundational facts after this part, but before we go into what are foundational facts, I'm going to ask you to think of them as the easier facts. Thinking about your students, which facts usually come easier? Is it the 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, or 10? So I want you to think about that. Think about the students that you've worked with. Historically, which of these facts have come a little bit easier for them compared to others? Think about that. Put that into the chat, but don't press enter yet. Oh, Denise, thank you. It's okay. Don't worry about it. But everyone else, go ahead and think about, Denise started us off. Think about which facts usually come a little bit easier for our students. Okay, go ahead, and when I count down 3, 2, 1, let's press enter in 3, 2, and 1. Okay. If you go ahead and scroll up, I think we have a lot of overlap, and it's always great. Like, I love working with teachers because when we put our brains together, we get a full answer. So many of you in the chat put the foundational facts too. And Michelle, you kind of like mentioned it has to do with our counting, right? Times 2, it's easy to count by twos. Another thing that's I think that's helpful for students with their twos is if they know their doubles addition facts, right? 2 plus 2, 5 plus 5, 8 plus 8. Then our times 2, it usually comes a little bit easier. And then some of you grouped 5 and 10 together, 10s and 5s or 5s and 10s. Those come a little bit easier. And I think it has to either do with counting or thinking about when we, in first grade, we first learn about like our 10s. So thinking about our base 10 system, 10s and 5s come a little bit easier. And then last but not least, 0 and 1 come a little bit easier for our students as well. Some of you mentioned 11. The reason why we didn't put 11 here is we just wanted to work with 0 to 10, but yes, 11 is also usually an easier fact for students as well. The reason why I wanted to bring foundational facts to your attention is because these are the facts that when students can like kind of thinking about them as our easier facts, foundational, or our anchor facts, if they're strong in their foundational facts, their knowledge of the foundational facts will really help them with these harder facts that aren't highlighted. I'm going to show you how these foundational facts can help them with these harder unhighlighted facts. I'm just going to try and think about this one more time and see if I'm missing anything, but I think we can move on. So what do I mean by these facts over here? How can we help students use their knowledge of the foundational facts to get to these harder derived fact strategies? On the screen, I put down 4 reasoning strategies students can use to get to these facts. I'm going to say right here, it's not so important that students know what these strategies are called. We can really call them whatever. It's more important that students really understand what these strategies are and they can decide then what they're going to use. So I'm going to go on to our next slide and show you an example of each of these strategies. For you all today, I want you also to think about by the end of today, not being able to like master what these 4 strategies are, but just remembering that these exist. So when you come back to school in August, you can look back to the screencast. I'm going to share a tiny URL so you can review then. Today's goal is to know of its existence, not know it like super, super well in your head. So let's go into our first derived facts strategy of doubling. So what do we mean by doubling? Remember, all of these strategies are anchored in one of our foundational facts, our 2, 5, 10s, or 0 and 1. I'm going to show you an example of when we're anchoring a fact based on our knowledge of 2s, or times 2s. So when I think of 4 times 7, one of the really important things with multiplication is encouraging students to know that multiplication means equal groups. So we can say 4 times 7, but also it's really helpful if students can see this as and say it as 4 groups of 7, because then I can base it on what I know about 2 groups of 7. 2 groups of 7 is a foundational fact. I know 2 groups of 7, or 2 times 7 is 14. So here are some different visual representations. So if 2 groups of 7 is 14 and I double those 2 groups, then now I have 4 groups of 7. So then I can double my 2 groups of 7, make 4 groups of 7, and know that it's 28. Here's one visual example of using counters or area model, or even just like a very abstract model of having 4 7s written out. But this is an idea of doubling. If I anchor my facts in 2s, that can help me with my 4s because I can just double my 2s facts. The next strategy is add a group and then subtract a group. They're related because it's doing something similar. In one, we're just adding, and one, we're just subtracting. Once again, really, really anchored in the fact that we are thinking about multiplication as equal groups. So when I'm working on 3 times 6, 3 times 6 is one of those facts that weren't highlighted. I'm going to anchor this once again into my 2s. If I know 2 groups of 6 is 12, and I want to get to 3 groups, I'm just going to go ahead and add one more group of 6 to make 3 groups. So then I added one more group of 6 here, one more group of 6 here or here, and I could think, oh, 12 plus 6 is 18. That's adding a group. So that can really help with my 3s. It can also help with thinking about our 6s as well. If I know my 5s, adding one more group makes 6 groups. Subtract a group is the opposite when we subtract. I really think subtract a group is really helpful for 9. I still, in my mind, I know this is like something I need to get over, because 9s were the last fact that I memorized when I was working with multiplication. I hate the 9s times tables, and I wish someone told me about subtractive group. Because when I do 9 groups, I can anchor it with my understanding of 10 groups. So if I know 10 groups of 6 over here, I have 10 groups of 6 is 60, I can subtract a group of 6 to get 9 groups. So here, if I subtract a group of 6, take away 6, and I can get 54. So that's add a group and subtract a group. Last but not least, we have a break apart strategy. A break apart strategy also anchors on the fact that we know multiplication is equal groups. So if I have 7 times 8, thinking of it as 7 groups of 8, I'm going to go ahead and break up my 7 groups of 8. We have 8 over 8 over here and 7 going up and down. So I'm going to break down my 7 groups of 8 into 5 groups of 8 and 2 groups of 8. Remember, my 5s and my 2s are those foundational facts. If I know 5 times 8 is 40, 2 times 8 is 16, I could go ahead and add those to get 56. So that is a break apart strategy. If I have 7, I know 7 groups of 8 is the same thing as 5 groups of 8 and 2 groups of 8 together. So that can help me with our 7s. Like I said, that was a really, really quick thing. If you've been in our Tune Up Tuesdays, we go through each one and we take a whole hour and a half. We're trying to do this in 30 minutes. So once again, right now, our goal is to know, hey, these derived fact strategies exist. I'm going to go back to this And in August or in September, when you're ready to think about this one more time, you can listen to this video, or we also have a tiny URL that goes through these derived fact strategies. So you can listen to one or another when we come back to school. The biggest thing takeaway here, I'm going to come back to the beginning of our breakout room when I said we're going to go through a lot. The biggest thing I want you to think about is how does this help you intentionally select a center or intentionally select a stage for a student? When I think about multiplication, we do multiplication in third grade, and our goal is by the end of third grade that students know their multiplication facts. But in reality, we know that our fourth graders and fifth graders also need time with this, right? And so when I think of having all of these, there are 100 facts students just need to know from memory. That's a lot, and it can be overwhelming. But if we chunk it in a strategic way, it can really help students know it from memory based on reasoning strategies, not just memory because they've memorized 3 numbers together. So when you're with your students, first ask, hey, which foundational facts do my students know? If they know all of them, then think about, okay, which derived fact strategy might I target next? We're no longer thinking about let's start with zeros and go up one by one. We want to think a little bit more strategically. You might also notice when you take a look and ask, hey, which foundational facts do my students know? That they might not know all of their foundational facts yet. Then go ahead and target a foundational fact before you really think about derived fact strategies. In the spring, our team went into STAR CBMs. It wasn't like a scientific method of doing it, but we just went into like some random schools, random classes to see and take a look at each student's data to see, hey, which foundational facts do the students know? What was interesting to know is a lot of our students across the district know their 2, 10s, 1s, and 0s usually, but we've seen that the 5s are still a little bit of a struggle. So that's something for you to also notice. Maybe students need a little bit more time with their 5s before then they go with their derived fact strategies. Yes, Erin, I'm going to go ahead and I could show the doubling slide one more time. But while I do that, remember 2 things to remember. How can this help you intentionally select a center and a stage? And then just remember, these strategies exist. When you come back in August and September, take a look at these, this video or the tiny URL again. With that idea of intentionally selecting centers, once you understand kind of how fluency develops and the foundational and derived fact strategies, you kind of see them everywhere. One of the locations that you'll notice them is in our how our centers are organized by stages. When you first take a look at this, it might be like, why are we starting with 2, 5s, and 10s? You know, I'm used to starting with our 1s, 2s, and then 3s, 4s. Why is it organized like this, right? Why 1 to 5 and 10 first? Well, it's because those are our foundational facts. And then we want students to then work on their derived fact strategies. So once again, once you know what students need, then you can intentionally select the stage that will really help their goal and their target. Like I said, if there's a student who still needs to work on their 5s, maybe capture squares stage 5 is a good idea. If you know there's a student that knows their 2, 5s, 10s, 0s, and 1s, maybe go on to stage 6. But that's kind of the thinking that we hope after the session that you'll take away with. When we go into our main room, Terry's going to go ahead and show you how you can assign these centers. One of the things is 5 in a row is ready right now for you to assign to students. Capture Squares is going to be one of the centers that we do make into Lumio. It's mostly ready. All we're waiting for right now, Capture Squares, there's a spinner and a dice, a number cube element to it. Right now, we're like waiting for Lumio to release their spinner and their number cube function. So as soon as that's ready, we're just going to put that onto the slide and publish it. So know that Capture Squares is in the works. We've been told that it'll be ready by the beginning of the school year. But for today, Capture Squares won't be one of the options for you to practice with. Know that it's coming. And any new centers we make into Lumio, Terry will notify you through that Google Classroom that you joined today. So just that's like an encouragement for you to stay in that Google Classroom because things are still in the works. Another place that you can look, because I know on our coordinate plane warm up, some of you today is like the first time you're thinking about centers. So you might be wondering, well, are these the only two centers that will build fluency? Another place for you to look at of like, where can I find more fluency centers is on our pacing guide. Here, in each unit, we've organized our centers by centers that target unit goals and fluency goals. The reason why we did that is our fluency goals, we believe that it's going to take more than a unit for students to be really fluent in all of their facts. So I'm going to go and just open up the pacing guide, oh, that's not it, this one, to show you. Starting in Unit 1, we have ongoing fluency centers all the way to our last unit. We have fluency centers because we know fluency builds throughout the year. So this is our way kind of communicating, hey, take the whole year to build fluency. It's going to take time. And as you do that, be intentional about which center and which stage you might assign to students. And here's a list of some of the centers that might help you with that. And so that is one place that you can also take a look for those fluency centers. I'm going to go ahead and end with the question thought that I started with of how will this kind of maybe new understanding or reinforcement of what you understood already about fluency help you when you're trying to select centers to assign to students and monitor. Just think about this to yourself. And then I'm going to ask you in the chat to go ahead and write down what thought comes to mind, but don't press enter yet. I'll give you around 30 more seconds to type up your thoughts. Okay, let's go ahead and press enter. What are some of your thoughts right now that you're having? I'm just like reading through and like, sorry about my audible. Okay, so I'm going to kind of summarize all like our group's ideas of that intentionality piece, knowing like thinking about what do my students need and then assigning that. And Megan, thanks for like noting that that is differentiation, right? A lot of the times we're like thinking about how do we differentiate these? The stages really differentiate, but then like if you can differentiate it like even in a more intentional way. And I wanted to uplift what Kelly said. Kelly said something about explicitly teaching those strategies. And I want to just uplift that because that is also one of those things that I get a lot of questions from teachers of like, hey, but my students don't know these strategies. Do I just wait until they figure it out? I'm going to say, no, we want to explicitly teach these strategies, right? So, but based on what they know, we don't, if I'm not sure if students know their 2, 5s, 10s, 1s, and 0s, I might not explicitly teach a doubling or adding a group strategy quite yet, right? Once I know that their foundational facts are there, I might explicitly teach, hey, let's take a look at like this, like, I'm going to go back to that model that Erin asked for over here. Let's take a look at these groups and maybe I'll just show them, kind of break it apart for them to show that that's 2 groups of 4 or 2, yeah, we could make we could double our two groups and having that discussion, so explicitly teaching them. So I wanted to uplift what Kelly said. Yes, there is time for explicitly teaching of these strategies. So students can first know them before then they apply them and appropriately select them. Once again, thinking about the whole year. Just because we teach them the strategy one day, we're not expecting them then tomorrow to apply it to all these other things. We might first start with like physical manipulatives, then maybe a area model that they draw, maybe a little bit more of an abstract model like this before they know it from memory. So one of the things I think that I would like to leave you with here is take that time. It's going to take time and it might feel like, hey, but memorizing is quicker. But know when we develop these strategies for students, memorizing might be quicker, but thinking about students forget easily. If it's based on these reasoning strategies, they always have something to anchor back to, and it's going to be efficient in that way. I realize I am a minute over and they might be waiting for us in the main room. So thank you so much for all of your time and energy. Let's go ahead and go back into the main room. And Rick, start recording. Today we're going to talk about how multiplication fluency develops. So in the beginning, just with Terry right now, we saw a little bit more about what does centers on Lumio look like. I was taking a look at our opening with the coordinate plane, and for overall in our group today, most of us are very familiar with centers. It's that Lumio piece that's a little bit new. And so just right now with Terry, hopefully that new piece was we've made some centers into Lumio, and what does that feel like as a student? Now we're going to go into, okay, how are centers, we're going to talk a little bit more about centers and fluency development so that you can intentionally pick centers and intentionally pick stages that will target whatever goal you have for your students. After we talk about fluency during this breakout session, we're going to go back into the main room, and then Terry's going to go over how you can then, as a teacher, assign those Lumio centers to your students. So let's go in and talk about fluency. This first part about what is fluency, I'm going to give a little bit of a heads up. If you have joined a Tune Up Tuesday fluency session, either with myself or with Jen Tustin, this part will be a review. If you haven't, great. And if you're also supporting addition, fluency for addition is the same thing. So this beginning part is going to be the same. I'm going to go and ask you to think about what words come to mind when you hear the word fact fluency. And if you can think about it just with multiplication or addition or both. I'm going to go and ask you to write maybe 2 to 4 words into the chat, but don't press enter yet. I'm going to ask us to press enter all together. So think about the words fact fluency, and then go ahead and type inside the chat, what are 2 to 4 words that come to mind when you think about fact fluency? Don't press enter just yet. Okay. Hopefully that was enough time for us to think about 2 to 4 words. Go ahead and press enter. I want to see what our group's kind of 2 to 4 words come up with. Go ahead and press enter. We'll have like a little bit of a waterfall, and then we'll scroll up all together and read through each other's comments. Okay, I'm going to go and start scrolling up and then scrolling down. I'm going to go ahead and encourage you to do the same, to just read through some of your other colleagues' responses. Okay. I always love asking teachers and educators to think about like what comes up to mind when you think about fact fluency. Overall, I think some of us have the same words, but kind of big picture, some of the themes that I'm getting is it's easy. There's an element of easiness, and I wonder if that has to do with it's like quick and accurate. Once it becomes quick and accurate, then maybe it becomes easy. I've actually never seen the word fun, but Gloria, you put fun fast together. Gloria, can you come off mute and kind of share what you're saying about like fun, fast, easy?
My students just enjoy when something's like quick and easy, like multiplication.com.
Mhm.
I just had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah,
Like,
and then you had that other word practice. Can you share a little bit about like, is it like practice and then fun, fast, easy? Where does practice come into play with all of that?
I would just have them practice using multiplication.com like every day.
Mm. Okay, and I think some of you other there are some other people who had that idea of practice as well. And so I'm going to go ahead and summarize our group's words and add a couple more words that come into place. But when we think about fluency, a lot of you put this answer accuracy, like it has to be correct, right? When we think about fact fluency, whether we're thinking about addition or multiplication, we have to be accurate, we have to be correct. Another word that came up is that efficiency part. And a lot of you use the word efficiency, but or use the word quick. When we think about efficiency, there's a time factor of efficient. We want to be quick and accurate to get to that place of memory. We just know it, right? Like Gloria, you were saying, like once students just know it, it's fun for them. One more element of efficiency that I'm going to put in here and we're going to go into today is those strategies. We also want to be efficient with our strategies. We're going to go into what do those strategies look like in multiplication. And then I'm going to introduce two more words when we think about fact fluency. And this was something that was new to me when I really dug into like, how does fluency develop? How do we help students with fact fluency? The first new word for me was flexibility. For me, in my experience as a student, it was just memorization. There was no flexibility. It was today's the 2 times tables, next day is the 3, and we went in order. And I wasn't really encouraged to think about the numbers that I was multiplying or think about it flexibly. So we're going to talk about how flexibility, encouraging that, helps during that practice to get to a point of memorization and just knowing it. The fourth word that I'm going to bring in is appropriate strategy selection. Whether we're working on multiplication for the first time or we've been working on multiplication many times with our students, we introduce different strategies. When we do, I remember I've introduced like a strategy. Today, this lesson, we're going to use this strategy. Next week, I'm going to introduce a new strategy. I always introduce new strategies, but what I didn't give my students the time to was think about, okay, now that I know these strategies, thinking about the numbers that I'm working with right now, which strategy makes the most sense for me and those numbers? And so giving students that opportunity to really think about for themselves, what's the appropriate strategy? When I was delving into fluency development, these ideas, some of these ideas were new, but the question then that I had based on my experience was this question on the board. What's so wrong with just memorizing facts? In the beginning, for me, fluency was all about just accuracy and that time piece for efficiency. And for me, because of my experience, it was just straight, just memorize it. We'll think about what that means later, but just trust me, the memorization will help you later. But I really had to struggle with this question of what's so wrong with memorizing facts. Once I really understood how flexibility and appropriate strategy selection was really important, then I went to like the other side of the pendulum of where I didn't really think about memorization at all. I had to kind of swing back into the middle and realize that, hey, memorization does have a role in fluency. We're not saying it's going out the window, but I had to think of it in a different way. Memorization is the goal. A lot of you in the chat put memorization, just know it, speed, recall. That is definitely the ultimate goal when we encourage students to develop fact fluency. But what I had to really wrestle with is this idea that while memorization is the goal, it's not the instructional strategy. So for example, growing up, my mom at home would like have homemade flashcards and stuff, and we would just do flashcards. I would just kind of memorize these three numbers when I see the multiplication sign go together. It was just memorization. But that was the instructional strategy. But I want to go over today how actually we want to develop students' flexibility and of number sense as well as appropriate strategy selection. So while we want memorization to be the goal, we want students' memorization or knowing of these facts to be based on their understanding of multiplication and equal groups. So I'm going to go over what that looks like in the next few slides. Take a look at this screen. I'm just going to give you around 30 seconds to soak it in. Okay, so whether we're talking about multiplication or addition, fluency develops in three phases. And the first phase is always counting. Counting can be counting all or skip counting when we think about multiplication. So think about some of your students you've probably seen and witnessed students using skip counting methods to get to their multiplication fact. I used to think that skip counting was like the midpoint from just counting all to mastery. But I realized that skip counting is still phase one. Because think about skip counting by six 4 times or by six 9 times. Yes, it could get us to a correct answer, but it might not be the most efficient way. Historically, what we've done is we focused on the different counting methods, and after that, we would go straight into, okay, now just try and remember them. Let's try and memorize them. But there's a phase two in fluency development. And what happens in phase two is students use reasoning strategies based on foundational facts. Let's go into what those foundational facts might be. So I'm going to go and ask you to take a look at this multiplication chart. I'll go and orient you to this chart. On the top gray and the left gray columns, we'll see our factors, and then these white boxes over here are our products. So for example, this product of 8 is we get by multiplying 4 times 2. So it's all of our multiplication facts from 0 to 10. I'm going to go and use like a synonym. It's not quite exactly the same thing, but when we think about foundational facts, think about those easier facts for our students. Go ahead and take a look at these products. Which facts usually come a little bit easier for the students that you've worked with? Go ahead and think about that to yourself and then put it in the chat, but don't press enter yet. Which of these facts usually come a little bit easier for our students? Okay, go ahead and press enter into the chat. In your experience, what usually is a little bit easier for our students? Thanks, Monica and Thomas, for starting us off. Great. If you haven't put in your, if you weren't typing in your numbers yet, no worries. If you want to just put a thumbs up to some of the ones that you agree with, I do see a lot of overlap. Thanks, Bridget, also for adding that 11 times table. Okay, so most of us put some combo of like 2 5 10s. I think, Monica, you started off with the 2 5 10s in one group, and then some of us also included the zeros and the ones. Can I ask just any of you who put into the chat, or even if you didn't put into the chat, why do you think those are usually a little bit easier for our students? Any kind of conjectures?
I feel like those are the ones that like when you're younger, before you're introduced to multiplication, you're like chorally skip counting. And I think that's why the facts come easier, probably.
Yeah, having to do with like even before we learned about what multiplication is, connecting with what we knew about addition and skip counting. And then something about our numbers, right? Because we're base 10, those 5s, 10s tend to be a little bit easier. And then our 2s, if we think about connecting with our addition are doubles, like 2 plus 2, 4 plus 4, 5 plus 5. Those usually are a little bit easier for addition, so it has some correlation with our doubles. And then our zeros and ones also can come easier, but one of the things that we sometimes might fall into a pitfall of is like just memorizing 0 means 0 and then 1 means always the same, but that's not necessarily the case for addition. So we're going to go into thinking about, okay, how do we make sure students kind of know these, thinking about multiplication as equal groups. But yes, so foundational facts, usually students have an easier time knowing their 2s, their 10s, and their 5s, and then also their 1s and 0s. The reason why we're going to call them foundational facts and not easier facts is they come a little bit easier compared to our other factors of 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, and 9. But it doesn't mean that like they're just like the same amount of easy for all students. The most important thing about these foundational facts is we want students to be strong in their foundational facts first, so that then they can use reasoning strategies to think about these products in these black squares and derive these harder facts from their foundational facts. I'm going to go ahead and skip to the next slide to give you examples of what we actually mean by these derived fact strategies. So once again, from this slide, just know 2, 5, 10, 1, and 0 are foundational facts. Those are the facts that we want students to be strong in first before we then target these facts in the white squares with the black outline. So our derived fact strategies, we have a few strategies. The first strategy is doubling. So what does doubling mean? Remember, these derived fact strategies are for those ones that were in the white squares. When we think about 4 times 7, yes, we want students to know that this we could read as 4 times 7, but we also want them to see this as 4 groups of 7, because that's really going to help when they think about derived fact strategies. Remember, our 2 times table is our foundational fact. So if they know that 2 times 7 or 2 groups of 7 is 14, and they use a doubling strategy, they can double 14 to get 4 groups of 7. Doubling 14, 4 groups of 7 is 28. So that is the doubling strategy. Students can use the doubling strategy for their 4s or for maybe their 10s, 5s and 10s, but that's the doubling strategy. That's an example. Another 2 that are related derived fact strategies is adding a group and subtracting a group. So our 3 times table wasn't included in a foundational fact. So when we think about 3 groups of 6, remember our 2 groups or 2 times was a foundational fact. So if I know 2 times 6 or 2 groups of 6 is 12, and here we have some visual models for it, I can add a group of 6 to get 3 groups of 6. So if I add another group of 6, now I have 3 groups of 6. And so 12 plus 6 is 18. That's an adding a group strategy. Subtract a group is very similar, but this time we're going to subtract. I really like to use the subtractor group or introduce the subtractor group for the 9 times table. I don't know about you, but I have very, very not great memories as a child trying to memorize my 9 times tables. I think it was the last one I did and my brain was already filled with too many facts. But if I knew subtractor group, it would have been a lot easier for me to know them. So 9 groups of 6, remember our 10 times tables is a foundational fact. So if I know 10 groups of 6 or 10 times 6 is 60, here are my visual models, I can take a group of 6 away to make 9 groups of 6. Oops, and 9 groups of 6 would then be 54. And here are some visual models. Our last but not least strategy, I'm going through them really quickly. I'll share a link to a tiny URL soon, is a break apart strategy. So think about this, 7 groups of 8. Once again, 7 is not a foundational fact. So when I think of 7 groups of 8, I have these models. This is my 7 groups of 8, but I'm going to break them apart into 5 groups of 8 and 2 groups of 8, because 5 and 2 are my foundational facts. 5 times 8 is 40, 2 times 8 is 16. I could break apart this way and this way, and I know then 40 and 16 is 56. So this is a break apart strategy that we can use for some of our facts. Let me go back to the chart with this and just kind of end over here. That was a really quick run through of the derived fact strategies. Here's a tiny URL that you can look at in August. Hopefully you'll take time to rest this summer in August when you kind of think about what fact strategies students might be ready for. The big takeaway for this slide is we want to be intentional when we think about assigning centers. So instead of just saying, okay, I know we need to know all of these facts, so let's just go into a multiplication, like just do all of our facts at once, that won't really help students think about reasoning strategies. So in the beginning, just kind of think about what facts do students are students already strong in, and what facts do students need more practice in. You might realize that students have all of their foundational facts, so maybe you'll introduce break apart. Maybe you'll introduce subtractor group. Think about which one you might want to introduce first, and then next, and then next. Or it might be there might be a chance where you realize, hey, my students have some of their foundational facts, but not all of them yet. So I'm going to target those foundational facts first. What was really interesting is in the spring, our team took a look. It wasn't like a very scientific method of looking through, but we took a look at a bunch of multiplication CBMs across different schools across the network. And we noticed that even across the networks and across the whole district, a lot of students were strong in their 2s, their 10s, their 1s, and their 0s. But what we noticed was students weren't as strong in their 5s. And so that's something that you might want to look for in the beginning of the year is maybe I just want to work on my 5s first with my students. So big takeaway from this screen is it's really important students are given the opportunities to first develop their foundational facts, then use their knowledge of foundational facts to derive the harder facts of 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, and 9. One of the things that we like to say in our team is that once you kind of know fluency, you see it everywhere. So one place that you'll see it is, I know many of you are familiar with centers already, is in our stages. So here are just 2 examples of multiplication centers. One is capture squares. Take a look at how the stages are developed from 5, 6 to 7. And then in 5 in a row multiplication, take a look at stage 1 and 2. Here you'll notice that at first you might be like, why do we do 2, 5, and 10 in first? But if you think about foundational facts and then derived fact strategies, 2, 5s, and 10s are foundations. Once we're strong with that, then we can work on maybe our 1s and our 3s and our 4s. Or maybe we want to just skip to 7 first and work on some other like subtractor group or break apart first with our 6, 7s, and 9s. Or in 5 in a row, it's 1 to 5 and 10, or 1 through 9. One of the things that we're going to do with Terry in a little bit is take a look at these centers and practice assigning them in our Google Classroom. In August or September, whenever you introduce these centers, what I'd encourage you to do is think about which stage might I introduce or assign to which students, or which ones will I start the whole class off to get a sense of where they're at with their foundational and derived facts. One place that you can also take a look at is, I know there are a lot of centers, but in each of our units, we've also have ongoing fluency centers. One of the things that I think teachers feel a lot of pressure to do is help students know their facts like within the first month or by December. But no, we know that fluency does take time to develop. And so for the whole year, we've, for grades K to 5, we have recommended ongoing fluency centers that you can assign throughout the year. We've given 1 to 3 different options per unit just for some variation, but if you're new to centers, or maybe you just really like one of these centers like Capture Squares, it's okay if your students play Capture Squares from September all the way through June. Don't feel like you have to change the centers every time. The more important thing is thinking about which stage might I assign to which students based on what you know about their fact fluency. I'm going to go ahead and ask you just to think about this question. How will your knowledge of foundational and derived facts inform your center selection and monitoring before we go into looking at the centers to assign? So just think about that to yourself for a minute. Okay, in the chat, I'm going to go on and ask you to write your thought based on this question, or if you had a question based on what we went over about multiplication fluency, or maybe you have a question about addition fluency, I'm going to ask you to put it into the chat. So go ahead and jot down your answer to this question or a question that you might have about fluency. This time, whenever you're ready, you can go ahead and press enter, since all of our thoughts might be slightly different. Thanks, Tracy. And give everyone a little bit more time to type and press enter. Would anyone like to come off mute and just share or have a question that they'd like to ask before I close us up with thinking about how to use centers? Okay, great. Thanks, Deborah, Monica, and Tracy. I think that differentiation piece and purposeful piece kind of go together, right? When we think about multiplication fluency or even addition fluency, really being intentional based on our foundational and derived facts is going to really help our students. And that interactive and monitoring piece for all centers is really important. One of the questions that we've gotten in our previous sessions last week is like, is one form of centers better than the other? Now I have a Lumio option for some of the centers. I know ILC has their own digital centers. I also know that there's a paper version of centers. Is one better than the other? Back to kind of that purposeful piece that Deborah, that you were saying, also thinking about like that purposeful piece of like, what do you want to also gain from centers? So I'm just going to kind of go through each option and tell you the kind of the pros for each option for you to think about, okay, for this center or for this group, I'm definitely going to use this option. For our Lumio centers that we're going to go over today, I think it's really great that it's digital. So you don't have to make copies of everything. You don't have to cut out anything. And also the fact that you can like in real time see students' work, but not even in real time. After students do it, you can still have a record of students' work. I think that's one of the great pieces about Lumio. because our IL digital centers, you can't see in real time, right? You can still assign digitally, so the paper preparation gets minimized, but you won't be able to see what kind of like numbers did students pick or how did they do. You won't be able to see that aspect. However, one aspect that IL centers have that Lumio doesn't have is in IL, those digital centers, it won't allow students to move on if they picked an incorrect answer. So let's say like for 5 times 4, they picked 15. IL won't allow like students to go on to the next page. So the one thing that's really great about IL's digital centers, it's that it's self-correcting. The paper version, I think what's really nice about the paper version is just that paper aspect. So many things are digitized, and there's definitely a convenience to that. But you might just want students like off the screen or that paper version, being able to kind of manipulate different things. I think for fluency, the digital versions are totally fine, but there are some centers, like a lot of our measurement centers or geometry centers, where that paper and that tactile piece, there is a important factor. And so that's something that you might consider when you think about which paper centers might I prepare. I share all of this to say it's really up to you based on what you are trying to encourage students to do, whether you use the paper, the IL digital center, or the Lumio center. And I think that like the most important thing is always being purposeful, knowing what each format limitations are and what each format benefits are. With that being said, any last questions or any last kind of suggestions to the group of how you've been using paper or digital centers? You feel free to come off mute if you have questions or if you have a suggestion for the group. Okay, if not, I'm going to go ahead and stop the share and pause or.
All right, now we're going to see the teacher build side. And we'll do a I do, you do. So you're going to watch my screen and I'll do it a little faster. And then I'm going to have you go over to your tab and actually do some pieces and then do that again and again until we get all the pieces. Right now, just so that you're all aware, the 5 games, now with inside of that, there's a lot of games, but the 5 games that we have that are working on fluency are counting collections, 5 in a row, addition, subtraction, multiplication, how close, and shake and spill. So when we get into this piece, you're going to pick one of those 5 games to look at today as we go through. And I'll say them again and they'll be in the chat when we get there. But I want you to watch my screen to see how I get there, and then we'll go from there. All right. So what I'm going to have you do in a minute, but watch now, is I'm going to have you go back to that Google Classroom. Literally below the student experience, there's a teacher workflow. It all starts from that OCI math website. Everything's going to start from there because it's all connected. When I give you a minute, you're going to pick your grade. You're going to go into that grade. You're going to go to your planning and resource guide, which everybody has. You're going to get to Unit 1 tab, everybody's first unit. And in both rooms, you saw this. You saw the unit level centers and you saw the ongoing fluency. So look at those names. You're going to find one of those 5. Remember, these are my 5. Everybody in Unit 1 has one of those 5. When you get there, you're going to click on one of those 5, and you're just simply going to open up that guidance document. Okay? So I'm going to get everybody there, and then I'll do the next part. So go back to your Google Classroom tab. I'll do this slow now, or slower. Go back to your Google Classroom tab. Hopefully you're still in the classwork tab, and you're going to scroll down till you see the teacher workflow. And inside there is the direct link right to the OCI math website. So click on that. It'll open up in a new tab. And all of these have been updated for 26-27 school year. So inside of there, find your grade level. Doesn't matter which grade level you pick. Find your grade level and click on it. It brings you into that planning and resource guide. Here's the part that everybody misses. Once you get to that sheet, hit the tab that says Unit 1. Hit the tab that says Unit 1. Inside of Unit 1, you're going to go down to where it says Unit Level Centers or Ongoing Fluency. And from one of those, this is where you're going to pick either counting collections, 5 in a row addition or subtraction, 5 in a row multiplication, how close, or shake and spill. So I'm going to ask you to click on that to bring up that guidance documentation. And if you got to the guidance documentation, can you click yes or click? Can you type yes or give me a thumbs up in the chat? All right, beautiful. Looks like everybody's about there. I'm going to ask you to come back over to my Zoom window again. After Unit 1, Michael, you should find the fluency, the unit level centers or ongoing fluency section of Unit 1. And then click on one of those games, either shake and spill, how close, I have to go back and look at the list, 5 in a row, or counting collections. All right, I'm going to ask you all to come back over to my Zoom room again, and I'll do a little I do, and then I'll slowly do the you do part of it again. Okay? So in the guidance documents, whichever one you pick, it takes you right to the stage that is appropriate in that grade level. There are other stages if you have kids that need to go back. I know in our room we were talking about IEP goals. So if you have other stages, you can go back. It's literally the Google Doc that you can scroll through. But it took me to shake and spill stage 4. In stage 4, when I scroll down, I see how to play the game, and this is the paper game. The virtual game is pretty close, but we might have had to tweak it a little bit just to be online. Then the next section is always those questions for active monitoring. It doesn't matter what version you are, you still should be actively monitoring your kids and helping them have that discourse if they don't know how to do it. So you might have some of these questions and prompt kids to ask other kids those questions also so that they get good at that discourse and hear the other kids thinking. Doesn't matter which version, all those questions work. But at the bottom, if it's a Lumio one, you'll see the little Lumio icon and it'll take you right into Lumio. When you click on this, it's going to make you log in, but you're watching me right now, so don't worry about that. It's going to take you right into Lumio, right into the district library, right into the stage you need to see. So when you look at these breadcrumbs here, I know I'm in the district library, I'm in math, I'm in centers, I'm in shake and spill, and I'm in stage 4. All right, this is the district version. We're going to put a copy in yours. 3 ways to make copies. The first 2 I'm just going to show you just because you've probably seen them before, but I'm going to ask you to do the 3rd way for today just so that you use that also. But there is, if you hover over one in the district library and hit preview, you literally can see every page there is down here, go page to page to page, and you can save to my library. That's one way. The second way you can do it is I can hit any of the 3 dots and I can click on save to my library. It automatically saves a copy to my library. The third way that you may not be aware of, and is probably the easiest, especially when you're picking multiples, like in shake and spill, we were just talking about fluency. I have some kids that need to just work 2s, 3s, and 4s. I have other kids that need 5s. So I need all of these. So I'm going to put a check in the check boxes and I can do all, some, none, or 1. Okay. And now you notice as soon as I just put a check mark in 1, I get the copy too. So that's like save a copy to my library. The reason I like this though is also because you can build folders for yourself to be able to find stuff when you go back. Okay. So when I hit that copy to, it's going to ask me where I want it. Well, I want it in my library. I already made a new folder that's called Math Centers. And inside of there, I already made a shake and spill because I've done this 4 times now. But I would make a new folder and this is shake and spill stage 4, maybe. And hit create. So now I have that folder. So I go into my math centers, shake and spills 4, and I copy them all there. They're all going to be there ready for me to go. So I like that way easier because I'm telling it where to go and keeping it organized because you all know you have kids, some kids that'll need one stage, some kids that'll need another. And if it's just dropped in your Lumio library, it's hard to find stuff. But if I make it in folders, it's easier to come back to. So I'm going to ask you to do the copy to today just so that you get used to it. So go back over to your tab where you have your guidance doc up. Scroll to the bottom of the stage you are on. So it may not have, it won't take you to stage 1 if you're second grade. It's taking me in stage 4 because that's the stage where my kids are. Scroll down past the questions for active monitoring and find that little Lumio icon and click on the link next to the Lumio icon. Now, you were in as a student a moment ago. So now it's going to ask you to log in as a teacher. So make sure if it gives you that question, you click log in as a teacher. Make sure you click on SDP email address because these are all in the SDP district library. And then it should take you right into where you need to be. You may only have one icon. That's okay. You may have multiple files. That's okay too. Whatever you have, check the checkbox. And as soon as you check one checkbox, you'll see the copy to. You're going to click on that copy to in the top bar. And this is where you click on my library because I'm making my own copy. And this is where, if you haven't done this already, you're going to click a new folder and type in Math Centers and hit create. Now, all that is doing is creating the folder. So now you'll see that folder. You're going to click on that folder. If you want folders within folders for each of the games, then by all means, put another new folder in there. Because I might need counting collections and I might need shake and spills. So I might want to delineate those just to make it easier for myself. Make a new folder. Once you get your whole folder structure set, hit copy here, and you will make your own copies. All right, Michelle, you are not seeing the Lumio icon. I'm going to assume in the guidance document. Go
Never
back.
mind. I found it. I was
Okay.
looking at the
Okay.
wrong date.
And that's the
Awesome.
harder
I
part
was
right now
looking.
because we have 5 on those documents. So if you click on guidance documents in one and it doesn't show the Lumio icon, that just means we don't have Lumio games set for that yet, or we might never have them depending on what the game is. Some of them are just better, like I said, pencil paper. All right, I'm going to assume everybody's got them copied now. So I'm going to ask you to come back to my screen, come back to the Zoom screen. I'm going to do this I do one more time, and then I'll go from there. All right, so if everybody will come back to the Zoom screen. All we did is make copies right now so that I can do whatever I want with them into my library. So I'm in the district library. I made copies to my library. If you see this, when you see this, you can just hit dismiss because we're going to find them. But when asked, I'm going to ask you to go to my library. Remember, I just copied stuff. By the way, this recent files drives me crazy. So sometimes I just click it up so I can't see it. I just created a Math Centers folder today. I'm going to go in there, and there's one of my ones I need. Remember, these were all asynchronous. They're not live because I might have kids starting in different places. So I'm going to assign, I'm doing this during planning time. I'm going to assign now. You can check, don't show this message again, but I'm going to click OK. And it's going to create a copy for me of that particular version. Remember, the My Library is your templates. The class session is where you find all the data. Okay, so it created a session. This is where all the data is going to be. Now, you can rename this if you want to. Like if you have a certain group of kids you're going to use this with, I'm going to do this with the Redbirds. You can have whatever naming convention you want, just so that you can rename it when it comes over here. Now, if you do not see all these buttons, it's because your window is too small. So I'm going to change the window right now of my browser, and you'll see I don't see any buttons. I just see dots. Everything's in the dots if you don't see it. Okay. Pull it a little bigger, you'll see some of the buttons. But the one you're really looking for is the share assignment. This button right here, share assignment, is the async link that you'll need. Okay, so I'm going to click share assignment. All I'm going to do is copy that assignment. And then I'm going to take that copy over to Google Classroom. I'm going to come up and create an assignment just like I normally would. I don't remember which one this was. I should have paid attention. Shake and spill. Might have been fours, don't know, can make directions. Here's the big thing. It's a link. That's all it is a link. I'm going to click link. I'm going to paste in the link and hit add link. That's Command V. Now, if I just hit assign right now, it assigns to everybody. But if you want to assign it to specific kids or create groups in this all students here, you can click on all students. And inside of there, there is a create group. So I can click create group. Sorry, I can't even talk today. And I am just going to assign it to different people. And I'm going to call that group, I think it was the Redbirds today. Or you can keep adding kids. You can do whatever you want, but create. And now you'll see I have these groups that I've created this week. So if I just want to hit it to the Redbirds, now it's only going to go to the Redbirds when I hit assign. So you can have it go to some kids, all kids, or different groups depending on what they need, because we just talked about the stages and where they are. So they'll need different things to work on that fact fluency. All right, and it's posted. And only the kids that I picked in that group can see it. You can see it, but only the kids that you can see it. Okay? All right, we're going to have you do this. So I'm going to ask you to go back over to your Lumio class. So you're in your Lumio session. If you have that pop up, hit dismiss all, because we don't need to see the copies. We know they made. Take a look at the top tabs. Where are you? I'm in shared libraries to start with, but I'm going to go back to my library in the top left. So along the top, the same thing, by the way, if your window's too small, it's a drop down menu up top. But the top menu is going to go to my library. Hide recents if you want to. That's up to you. But you're going to find that folder that you made. You're going to go into that folder that you made. And if you made folders and folders, keep going until you find one of your activities. And then when you find an activity, you're going to hover over it and hit assign new to make that async link. If you see the pop-up, hit don't show this message again. Like I said, I just keep leaving it there so everybody's there. And it made a copy for you then. From the copy, top right-hand corner, from the copy, there's 3 dots. In the 3 dots is where you can rename it if you need to. I'll give you a second to rename it if you want to rename it. And then if you renamed it, now hover back over it and you should see that share assignment. So copy or click on the word share assignment, I should say, and then you're going to copy the link. So now I have what my kids are going to work on. I now want you to add a new tab in your browser. or go back to the Google Classroom you're working in with me. Doesn't matter which. But I want you to go into Google Classroom and I want you to find one that you are a teacher in. It could be last year's. That's fine because well, maybe they are going to do it this summer. That'd be kind of fun. But besides, we just want to assign it in one. So there are different places you can paste this depending on what your kids are working on or kids are doing. You could actually put it in the stream if you wanted to, just a link if everybody's working on the same one. Or go to the classwork tab and hit create. It could be a material or it could be an assignment. You could decide which one you wanted to make it. I'm going to make mine an assignment again. I'm going to title it just so I know what it is. I don't remember what stage. Putting question marks for myself. The most important part is that bottom piece where it says attach. You want to click on link. And we're going to paste in that link. So it's a Command V is your paste and hit add link. Again, if you hit assign, it goes to all students. If you want to create groups, you can. If you've never created groups and you need help, when school comes back, contact your ed tech coach. They'll be glad to come out and help you with the groups. That's up to you. For this one, I'm just going to go to all students and I'm just going to click assign. And now it's in your assignment. And you could put it in topics like you do if you go by week, however you set up your Google Classroom, but then it's there for the kids to be able to click on and they're ready to go. Remember, we gave them the async link so they could work whenever they needed to or at whatever pace, because they'll always have the arrows on the left side to be able to go from page to page to page. If you were able to assign, could you please type the word assign in the chat? Perfect. All right. Going to ask you to come back over to my Zoom room one more time. I want to show you where you can find the student data or be able to get to it also. Okay. So if you don't have any student data yet, so nobody played. But if you come back over to my Zoom window, two ways to find that data. You can go directly into Lumio, find that file and click review. Or if you're used to going from your Google Classroom, I literally in my Google Classroom, when you clicked on this link as a student, it took you to the async version. When I click on this link, because I'm the teacher and the teacher in that Lumio link, it's going to take me in and let me see all the class data that's inside of here. So when I'm down here, here's the dashboard. I can open up the dashboard and I can see everybody's work. So you guys were still live in here, but even if it's not live, I can go into somebody's earlier and see what they did. Depending on the game will depend on how much you can see after the fact. But you can always come in and leave a comment during the class. That's one way to get into the class or to see the data. The other way is if you go directly from Lumio and find that session. So here is the Google Classroom session. I literally called it Google Classroom to help myself. I can come in here and hit review and I'll be able to see the same thing and go down and see all the data. Now, some of the things you might want to do or might have your ed tech coach help you with, I don't need my kids to see all these things when I assign it. So before I hit assign, if you know anything about Lumio, you're probably good to do some of the editing on those pages. But if you don't, again, contact your ed tech coach. But before you assigned it, if I was in my classroom, or my library rather, if I'm in my library, I could have come into any of these and I could have edited the file before I made a copy. Like suppose I don't want the front page, or suppose I don't want all of these things for the kids. I can literally unlock them and delete them. So when I hand it out, it's not there. I could delete the page. I could do a whole bunch of things. If you really don't like my voice, your ed tech coach will be very happy to show you how to put your own voice in here because my voice can be a little harsh sometimes. It works well with the high school setting, wakes them up, but but you can put it in your own voice if you wanted to. So all of this stuff is editable before you make a session. What I will tell you is in some of these, though, the game itself, unless there's a problem, you probably don't want to edit because this one in itself, I hid like a whole bunch of numbers down here to play in this how close so that they don't know what they're randomly grabbing as they're randomly grabbing numbers. And this is where I was saying to you all, if it kind of made sense to you, is if there is 4 pages, 4 games in here, I literally hid numbers in different places on each page so that if they memorize where the nines are, they can't find the nines in the same spot in the next page. But if you needed a few more, you could easily duplicate a page. But if you're going to duplicate a page, no, not to put them right underneath of each other. Just mix them up again where you put them before you hit assign. But for the most part, we have games that'll last for a long period of time, depending on which one. All right, and that's how you can see the data. You can do some quick edits, especially like I said, to the first pages before you make your assign new, and you're good to go. And then in Google Classroom, if you want to, you can just, instead of making groups, check kids' names of who you want to give it to, and then just keep adding kids as they're ready for that stage. And then it would just show up in their dashboard when they're ready, like it's not there. So those are all things you can work out next year, kind of as we go through this process. Again, these are the games we have right now. And as we add ones, we'll put them into the thread for this classroom, or then the stream for this classroom so that you can see if we add new games. And then what I want you to do is I want you to realize that off of that agenda, there is a link that will take you to your ed tech coach. So I'm going to go back to my agenda from the very beginning and go through the resources real quick with you. Down here, there's the whole Lumio presentation I did. There's the breakout room presentation. Here's those 2 derived facts parts that they were talking about. And then off of here is the ed tech site where you can get to Google Classroom help if you need, or if you can get to Lumio. But on the ed tech site, guys, if you need help, your ed tech coach can be found right here. And it'll list it by schools of who your ed tech coach is. You can just contact them. Because this is June, let's face it. In August, our Marion is a little different. So when you need help with the steps, you can start with the things that are on here, but you can also contact your ed tech coach as you go along. But this is a great spot for how to build for everything you need when you come back in August.